Alrighty, in this video, we're gonna talk about something completely different than green screening and animation through keyframes and stuff like that. We're gonna do good old-fashioned stop motion, where we have captured a lot of still footage, like these. We have 105 JPEG files captured with my phone, and each of those sort of shows the progression of a short story here. And you can see when I select them all, that's the kind of motion we're gonna create. Now, an important thing is that in Premiere, we can make it interpret all of these files as one complete movie clip, but only if we have them numbered like this, 1, 2, 3, 4, or A, B, C, D, or something like that. And often when you have an image file, it will look more like EMG underscore some kind of random numbering. So what we need to do on Mac here, you'll need to right click and you will need to rename all of the elements. On Windows, it is basically the same principle. On Mac, you'll get something like this. And what you will need to do here is maybe either to just make a space, so it's just a blank space, and then start with a number, or maybe just call it picture or whatever. I'm just using a space here and press it like that. Whenever you do this, it will be renamed like something that I have here. Having that done, we can go back into Premiere, press Import to start, and on our desktop, you should be able to find the stop motion intro. We can see in here now we have all the images. So of course I could just go back and I could import the entire folder here like this, but then I would have to select each and every of these image files individually and put them into the timeline, which would take forever. So instead, we can delete this one. We can use a trick Premiere has. So when I select my first JPEG file, I have down here an options menu. When I press that, I can select this option called image sequence. When I select that and I press import, basically it tells Premiere to interpret all numbering as one long movie clip. So now you can see if I double click here, you can see I have a very, very long, but also very, very fast clip with all the image files. Now, this image file is a wee bit too long here, or too fast, I'm sorry. So this is of course because that right now you can see that the frame rate of showing the images is 25 frames per second. That is very much akin to normal video. But I only made 105 photos. So that would only account to 4 seconds. And this is a bit longer. So what we can do here is to make it a bit more rough, but also a bit more watchable. So from selecting this clip up here in the project folder, I can go up into clip. Up here on top, you have this selection of clip. And we have the option of modify. And when we select modify, I can ask Premiere to interpret footage. This one here, clip, modify, interpret footage. And I can actually make it assume up here on top a different frame rate. So I might want to do 1 frame per second might be a bit too slow. So I could of course start by saying, okay, let's lower it to around half, so 12 frames per second. And you can see instantaneously now the video will take 8 seconds. Let's try to press OK down here. You can see now, if I select again, the video is definitely slower, but it's still a wee bit too fast. So I can just go up again on my clip, modify, interpret footage, and maybe say, let's say, go all the way down to 5 frames per second. Now you can see we have a 20-second clip suddenly. It might actually be something that we would like to do. So something like that. Let's see, how does it look then? This is more like it. Even though the motion is rough, we sort of get the idea. This guy is finding his device, he's scanning, and suddenly his true love arrives, and they just throw all their digital noises and they just live happily ever after. So now I essentially have one clip that I can, as we've done before, drag down into the timeline, and I now create a short video file here. And it actually just works like a normal file. Of course, I can then begin to edit it, because we can see here, I recorded this inside a white box, so I've got some nasty edges here. So maybe we'll just wanna remove these with a cropping effect. And just drag the crop, like we've done so many times before, up in the effects control, and just deselect this. And maybe also deselect complete buttons. There. And from the button we saw that at one point, you can see here, my finger has actually snuck its way to the video. So we need to sort of delete up until my finger is gone. And for visual purposes, we could also, of course, take from the top. But we don't need that, because we also just want to quickly apply our Alt key down here from below. And because this one is much more uniform in its color than the one with the real actors, we only need to press once, select the aggressive notion, absolutely, and then adjust it accordingly, like that. So now we have something that actually works rather nice, because it is so filled with contrast with these white characters. Maybe we don't even need a background. So we can just have our story take place like this. But you can see now it looks a bit strange because our actor is actually coming from nothingness here. So we will do this small adjustment by now taking our video layer, just move it down here, like that. So again, now we have some kind of very classic, very simple story told here with these two up, it's high, and everything is nice. But now, maybe we actually wanted it to last a bit longer, so we sort of could get a hang of that this stuff is happening right here. There are multiple things we can do. First thing is that we could make what we call a frame hold. So we can essentially tell Premiere that this should be a single still image that could be frozen in time. And we can also do that with video, but I'm going to show it to you here in stop motion. So if we drag here, we can zoom in, dragging here. I will just select this very last clip here, very last one. And I'll use this razor tool, the one found when we had our window and we have the tools. This one should pop up. And you have this razor tool. And I can select that, and I can select down our timeline. You can see here, when I click then, I actually got a small independent clip now in the end. And if I right-click on this one, right-click on this very small one, maybe you need to zoom in to see it. I have the option around the middle of saying add frame hold. And when I do that, I can actually just move my marker here until it becomes red. Whoops. Like that. Okay. Let me do that. We was into frame. Oh. Why doesn't it work? And add frame hold. Let's try that again. Add that again. Maybe it's actually pressed back wrong the first time. Oh, right. Okay. Now, if it doesn't work, you can right-click, press frame hold options, and then make sure that when you have your frame hold, you can see over here, that you have made sure that it is set to sequence timecode, and just press OK. And you can see what I have now is that I actually have a clip that I can extend. So even though the clip here ends over here, we walk towards each other, they throw the phones, they stand in motion, we've actually just frozen it in time. So now it is a lot easier for us to, for example, if I wanted to go up here in graphics, wanted to add some text, I can add a text layer. Let's wait for the computer to load. And I could write love is in being rare, like that. Make it new years if I wanted to. So again, of course, we can now have this be. We can see it came up here as a graphics element. So I might have this fade in. We have this exponential phase, or no, the cross dissolve of here in our effects. And I can add this to this one to sort of have it fade nicely in like that. And just extended it. So it sort of fades in while this in here. That. And also make it a shorter fade if I wanted. Like this. You can see now it faded in. And maybe we want it to sort of dip to black in the end. So to make it faster. And that. And again, select the effect, make it shorter. So you can see now it comes up the text and it is dip to black. Very nice. So now we have the video. We have added stop motion. But of course, we could do this in multiple ways. You could also say, okay, at this point where he actually scans, maybe I wanted that to be a bit longer. Then I could just use the razor to select parts of the middle of that clip before the latent arrives. And then I could actually also just right click on this little clip here and the path. I could right click on it and say speed duration, for example. And I could just add, okay, let this one be on half speed. When you do this, when you select the right click, when you right click and use speed duration in the middle of a clip where you have added other stuff, it is really important that when you extend it or extend it, that you actually press this one called ripple edit. That will make sure that it actually pushes all the rest to the right. And I press this one, you can see now we've made this clip twice as long. So now the scanning here is a lot slower, and then it speeds up again when our lady arrives. But you can do this with any clip. You can also make it run faster in this way. Speed duration, and let's say, okay, 150% ripple edit, and you can see it became instantaneously quicker. You can do this with in stop motion, and you can do it with video too. So either that, or if you want to freeze frame, you just cut out a small element and you use the frame hold instead. Alrighty, that was the stop motion effect. You can see here we actually don't use as many effects as we do when doing green screening, and often stop motion can be quite effective to simplify what we want to sketch out to some rather nice effect. And of course, if I want to, I could find whatever backgrounds I might have on my computer. Maybe I had a background with some still footage here. We have a background. And of course, I could do just as we've done before by just selecting all my clips in the timeline and dragging them up and top, and I can add whatever image file that I want into the background layer here. And you can see now we then have all the action taking place here at a station. So you can play around with it. Stop motion, combine it with real life photos, it might actually work rather nicely. And this goes to show a thing that we haven't added yet to our effects folder, and we'll do as the last thing before we end now. And that is the ability to blur stuff. Because it might be nice to actually blur the background a little because we have these clearly drawn figures. So if I now write blur up in my search panel here in effects, you can see we have the option of blur and sharpen. And I think we should drag these down into our sketching effects, both the blur and the Gaussian blur and the sharpen. We drag them down here into our effects. We can see now if I deselect it up here, you can see we now have the option of blurring also. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the Gaussian blur and then drag that on top of the footage of Nørreport here. And then we can add degrees of blurriness. And you can see that actually works rather nice. We get some context, but we don't get more context than we still have these figurines in focus. And of course, we could select the toggle animation and actually animate how blurring and add a blur effects and stuff like that. But right now, it works rather nice for our little video here. They have some context now. They're meeting at a station. Very nice. And you can see, of course, we could clean up the stuff that comes from the green screen effects and all of that. We could figure out, is it something to do with our Ultra key? What do we actually need to remove? It's probably something, you can see it's something to do with the shadows, and we can tweak it all. But in the end, now you actually have all the effects. We've added the color keys, seen how Ultra keys are often the way to go. We've used crop to adjust and remove elements from the scene. Use corner pins to distort an image, to create vanishing points, to create perspective. Use cross dissolve, dip to black, dip to white, to actually change how we fade in or fade out of the scene. We have the exponential fade to fade out audio. We have blur to change the blurriness of backgrounds or foregrounds, and the flips and sharpens and the vertical to actually change how something becomes sharper or flips on the horizontal or vertical axis. And again, we made this short stop motion from just making an image sequence from 100 images. Instead of pulling them in manually, just created this clip. We modified the footage, interpreting it, changing the frame rate, and then beginning to edit. So that's the basics of stop motion, and that actually completes our series of 4 small introductions to video and animation-based sketching in Adobe Premiere. Have fun exploring more methods. Now we've just scratched the surface of what you can do. I urge you to go in and explore your own methods, your own techniques to do this stuff. One thing we haven't touched upon is that you can, of course, also go up here in File, say New, and then you can create your own different titles, often legacy titles. You see here, whoops. And often these go quite well in stop motion. We could say File, New, legacy title, give it a name, or just call it title for now. And you can add both text, but also different shapes. So if I wanted to maybe have a foreground layer here, we could just draw something here and say, okay, I need it to be sort of a table-like color, stuff like that. And you sort of have this element as something we could drag in. Just to give you an idea of what we can actually do when we play with different effects. And see now they actually have sort of a background here, and we could have tweaked that to have a texture and stuff like that. But again, explore the different aspects of in graphics, of in New. You can add all sorts of things, graphical elements, you can add subtitles. The sky is basically the limit here. But make sure to often save your project and make sure to export the video whenever things become too slow, and maybe just continue to edit the new file so it won't sort of have to render all of the effects at once. Okay, have fun editing.